10 days after I gave birth to my baby girl, Sequoia, I woke up with the worst headache imaginable. I felt like an elephant was sitting on my head. It was a normal day as usual. My husband and I woke up about 6:45 that morning. My plan was to get the kids dressed. He would get dressed and go to work, drop the kids off on his way there. But that morning, that headache was something very unusual, unnormal for us. I let him know that I had a headache. He kind of gave me this look like, okay. But for me, it was very different than any headache I had ever experienced. I typically had migraines, but this was different. I got the kids dressed. My husband said goodbye, I love you, our normal routine. But that morning, when he left with our two older children, I didn't just go back to bed. My mother was there visiting because I just had the baby. So I took the baby into the guest room with my mother while I laid down. I thought maybe if I laid back down, this headache would go away, but it didn't. In fact, it actually got worse. A few hours passed. I cried. It was so bad. The pain was intense. And my mother said, something just doesn't seem right. She actually gave me some of her pain medication for the headache. And mamas had that good stuff. So in my mind, I thought, surely this headache will go away now. It didn't. It didn't even touch the pain. It continued to get worse and worse. Because I'd been laying down for so long and crying and my head indented into the pillows, my face started to feel kind of funny. And so a few hours passed. Now it's about lunchtime. And my mother says, this isn't right. I think we should go to the hospital. I called the OB doctor instead because the hospital was the last place that I really wanted to take my baby girl to. The OB doctor said that they were busy and that they didn't have any openings for me. And so I packed up the baby, we got dressed, and we headed to patient first. When we pulled into the parking lot, my mother said, what is this? This isn't an emergency room. This isn't even a hospital. And I said, well, the emergency room is just so nasty. I don't want to take the baby there. And she looked at me like, you've got to be kidding me. We need to go to a hospital. But I flat out refused. When we went into the patient first, the first thing that they did was took my blood pressure. It was sky high. I'd never had blood pressure that high. And I'd actually developed high blood pressure during my pregnancy, but it still had never been that high. They looked at my baby and said, whose baby is this? And I said, mine. And they immediately told me that they could not treat me. Now, this was the first time that I'd heard that you could not be treated by anyone aside from your OB doctor 6 weeks after you'd had the baby. And so for that 6 week period, only your OB doctor could treat you. So they called my OB doctor while I was there. And she told them, just like she told me, that they were too busy and that I would have to go to an emergency room if it was emergent, that I had developed preeclampsia during my pregnancy, and I also had a history of migraines, and to give me something for pain and send me home. Now, those three words didn't really sit well with me. Send her home. They actually rang in my head for years. Send her home. Because essentially, she was sending me home to die. I kind of felt some type of way about that because I felt like we'd had a relationship. For 9 months, she'd been my OB doctor with my youngest daughter, and that practice had actually delivered my older daughter as well. And so I felt like, there was no real urgency to tend to my care at all. And so we left there. And by the time my mother and I and the baby left the patient first, I was in so much pain, I could barely see. My vision had gone from being able to see on the sides of my face to a small frame of vision in front of me. And I kind of thought, well, I've been crying all day long. My head is throbbing. And so it has to be that, just from the crying. It has to be why I can't see that well. So I drive back home And we get back home, and it's just this headache is going to go away at some point. It's going to go away. And it's interesting how, I had these symptoms that I continue to make stories about. I had these stories that I made up in my mind that it's this reason why this is happening to me. And we've done it. Many of us have done it. That we'll have situations where here's the situation that's happening, the real life situation. My vision is diminishing. I'm having an issue on my face. My face was actually drooping on one side, but I've made this story up about it. And I've made this story up in my mind. It's not the actual truth about the situation, but I've made this story up in my mind. So at this point, I'm believing this story. And anyone who's questioning the situation, this is the story that they're getting. And so at some point, they're going to believe this story as well. So I'm home at this point, and I'm going through it. About 6 o'clock, my husband gets off work and he comes home. And the first thing that he asks is this the same headache that you've had since this morning? And I said, yes. And he said, let's go. And he drove me to Norfolk General Hospital. And I will never forget that car ride because I had this overwhelming feeling. And a lot of us as women, we have these feelings at times. It's called intuition, where we have the feeling of something, even though we don't necessarily have any proof or data or anything to substantiate the feeling. But I had this feeling that things were going to go really wrong, that I was not going to leave that hospital alive, that this was it for me. So we've gone from a headache to high blood pressure to my vision diminishing to at this point on that car ride, I really couldn't see much at all. In fact, on the car ride to the hospital, all I could see was the color red. I couldn't make out anything, just a color. And I kind of knew this is just not going to end well here. And so I asked my husband to make a promise to me that he was going to take care of our kids. And I remember him looking very confused, like he had no idea where this was coming from. And, he couldn't understand why I would say that to him. And from that point, we walk into the emergency room, the doors open. I remember distinctly those doors opening and us walking through the hospital doors. I peed on myself. And it was just this feeling of this is it. I don't remember anything after that. 3 days later, I wake up in ICU. The entire left side of my body is paralyzed. I'd had a stroke on the right side of my brain. 3 days after that, I had a second stroke in the frontal lobe of my brain. I had memory and cognitive issues. To this day, I still have challenges and I just deal with them. But I can tell you that at 27 years old, there's nothing that can prepare you for a doctor standing over your bed telling you that you are paralyzed, that you will never walk again, and that you will need assistance for the rest of your life. There's nothing that can prepare you for that. But at 27, as a wife, a mother, a business owner, a child of God, I refuse to believe that was my prognosis and that would be my future. I never accepted that prognosis. And there are many people who have asked me, how did you get through this time? How did you overcome all of these things that you've overcame? And I've always said my faith in God. But I'll tell you, there's something else that has gotten me through this. I'm a fighter, and I've always been a fighter. But I was so mad. I was mad. I was mad that this whole situation happened to me. And I can tell you that anytime that you've been mad, think about it. If you've ever been in a fight, if you've ever had a disagreement with someone, just that rage that's in you, it fuels you. It fuels you to go more, to go further, to go harder. And I did that. I did that with my doctors. When my doctors would come in my room and tell me negative prognosis, when they would say things to me like, Miss Quinn, you have to understand that this is going to be your life. We see many patients that have had the similar, brain functions and, brain disruptions that you've had. And, they just don't come back from this. Yeah, I rebuke that. That is not something that I'm going to agree with. And so when you understand that your mind is powerful, so powerful that you can control everything about you with your mind, it doesn't matter how many other people have gone through what you've gone through. You control you. You can get through anything because you're in control of you. You are. And so that was what I had on my side. I had God in me. You have God in you. And greater is he that is in you than he that is in the world. And so it doesn't matter what anyone is saying. I didn't believe the doctor's report because God has a greater report. And if I had belief in the ICU, I would probably still be there. I spent 3.5 weeks in ICU. I spent another week in a step down unit. And I can tell you that they had to put an alarm on my bed in ICU because of how many times I tried to get out of my bed and walk. And just think about what that sounds like. A person who is paralyzed is trying to get out of their bed and walk so much that the hospital has to put an alarm on their bed to catch them when they're trying to get out of their bed. I was in ICU. And I can tell you that I hit the floor so many times. I had bruises all over my body from hitting the floor, and I did not care. They sent psychiatrists into my room to talk with me because they thought that I was crazy. And I'm going to come back to that point in just a moment. But it's okay with me because what you believe is what you believe. And you have to be so strong in your beliefs that you get to where you're trying to go with them. So, fast forward, once I got out of the hospital and done all kinds of therapy, physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, because I certainly did not sound like this. Um, Amazingly, I was discharged with a walker that I still refuse to use. And I definitely needed it, but I still refused to use because, again, I was in that fight or flight mode. And I did not want to succumb to the prognosis that the doctors had given me. In my mind, I saw myself where I am today. And so I did everything that I needed to do to get back to this point, not succumb to what the doctors told me that I would be. I got to this point and I did what I needed to do to get here. And I want to talk to you about that, about mindset, because that is the most important thing is mindset. What you believe is going to lead to your actions. So what I believed is that I will be right here today doing exactly what I'm doing, everything that I'm able to do. I believe that. I believe that with everything in me, no matter what a doctor said to me, no matter what it looked like, I still believe that. Your belief will lead to your action. See, no one would try to get out of a hospital bed, even paralyzed, if they didn't believe that they could walk. And somebody could say, well, I think I could walk, but never try to walk. They don't really believe it. So your actions will lead to your results. And if you're taking notes, which I hope you are, you want to just write that your beliefs, then draw an arrow, leads to your actions, and then your actions, draw another arrow, leads to your results. There are many times that folks talk about the results that they want, but their actions have never led to those results that they're talking about. So all we have to do in life, if we want to really, really look at the things that we want, is just back up a bit and look at what we're doing. What are we doing to get there? What are we really doing to get the results that we're talking about we want? Everything falls back on our beliefs. Everything, because our actions stem from our beliefs. We're only doing the things that we believe are going to get us to the results we want. And so if you think about someone being in ICU, having an alarm put on their bed, if you aren't going that hard for your goals, if you ain't going as hard as somebody being paralyzed, needing an alarm on their ICU bed, you don't want your goals really seriously as you're talking about you want them. No, you don't. And so I want you to really think about that. Think about how serious you are about whatever it is that you're saying that you want. Again, your beliefs dictate your actions, and your actions dictate your results. I want to give you all a free giveaway. One of the things that led to me having two strokes was my lifestyle. I was overweight and I had uncontrolled high blood pressure. My uncontrolled high blood pressure didn't even last that long. I did not even have high blood pressure that long. Remember, my daughter was 10 days old. 10 days. I developed high blood pressure during that pregnancy. And so my doctor told me that my blood pressure would go back to normal once I had her. It didn't. And I was overweight, clinically obese. And so I've changed my lifestyle completely, turned my life around. And I want to share with you a cookbook with all kinds of wonderful recipes. I'm sure you will love. And you can find that cookbook. It's a free digital download at www.dreamgiversacademy.shop. Dreamgiversacademy.shop. That is a free giveaway. And then I also want to talk to you really briefly about the signs and symptoms of stroke that I made up stories to ignore. And so, one of the things that the American Heart Association has talked about is those signs and symptoms of stroke that we can recognize in ourselves and in others with the acronym BEFAST, BEFAST. The B stands for balance. And so if you are feeling off balance just for no reason, just out of all of a sudden, just, shaky, that's a sign of of having a stroke. The E is for eyes. I had that symptom of eyes where my vision just started to diminish very quickly. The F is for face, and that's for the face drooping that I had. One whole side of my face dropped. And so if you smile and both sides of your face doesn't smile, only one side, that is a sign of stroke. The A is for arms. And so that's for arm weakness or arm pain. And it used to be left arm, but it could be left or right arm, either arm. The S the S is for speech, and that could be slurred speech, or in my case, it was slurred speech as well as talking incoherently. I remember my husband saying that he couldn't even understand what I was saying on the way to the emergency room. And then the T is for terrible headache, terrible headache. And that was what I had, a terrible headache. And so you can remember those symptoms through the acronym BEFAST. Stroke is taking people out more and more left and right. It is the number one way of disability in the United States, and it is definitely affecting more African American women than many other diseases. I'm an advocate for prevention of stroke, and I have a nonprofit organization called GLAM, Giving Life and Motivation. Our website is glaminc.org. You can find out more information there. I want to talk to you again briefly about my second offer. I have a masterclass coming up, and I know I have a story, but there are many other people who have stories just as compelling, if not more compelling than mine, and just don't know how to package it and put it together or have it to reach the masses. I'm having this masterclass coming up here very shortly. It is only for a select few. It's not open to a lot of people. It's going to be an intimate masterclass, very hands-on. It's a Zoom masterclass for 6 weeks. It's for groups, and we will have some one-on-one coaching as well. But this is going to be able to get into mindset, crafting your story, packaging it. We're going to get into some speaking, but this is something where you can really be able to develop your craft for your story. And I'm going to tell you that I have been featured in Essence magazine. I have a documentary that BuzzFeed has done on me. I've been featured in countless news media outlets. And to be able to share my story on this magnitude, even opened up for my governor's breakfast here in the state of Virginia, spoken at congressional settings, to be able to speak on this platform just by sharing my story is something that I have really has touched my heart and has touched the hearts of thousands of people. When you have a story, it is something that is not just for you, it's your test, but God is using it as a testimony to bless other people. You don't know who's waiting to hear your story for their breakthrough. And so this masterclass is something that is going to be able for you to not only craft your story for you, but for so many other people. For various reasons, but we're looking for people who are ready to learn how to take it to the next level with their story as well. So you can go to www.dreamgiversacademy.com. So same Dream Givers Academy, but .com to get more information about the masterclass, mastering your story. And so with that, I want to leave my how to connect with me, TamikaQuinn.com. And on social media, it's author Tamika Quinn on all social medias. That's author Tamika Quinn. It has been my pleasure sharing my information with you all. Thank you so much.